Greetings all, BWS2K here. We are launching a new series that leans a little bit more into the Mythical Game Master emulation that we practiced and started with in the last series, the Mythical series, which we kind of suspended or paused. This one features Marrow, and I'm calling it Recollections. I think that's what I'm going to call it, at least like the first act that we work through, the first set of scenes. It's going to be called Recollections. And I just like last time, I haven't put a lot of thought and planning into this for where it goes because I get sort of analysis paralysis and I get stuck in circles and I can't ever get anything out of it. And also I find that if I just give in to my intuition and trust my muse and kind of let things flow, then that's when I get the really cool moments. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. So Mythical Marrow Recollections, we'll move right on into the Mythic page and the Mythic setup. So if you've watched those previous videos, then you know this process a little bit, but I never really took the time to walk through all of it. And I'm still not really going to take the time to explain it in a granular fashion, though Mythic Game Master Emulator, this is the first edition. There is a second edition that came out in the last year, maybe, or maybe 2 years. I don't know. Time is weird. But this is the older version. And so the basic way that you set things up is you have these lists, and then you make proposals for how to set a scene up or how you want a scene to go, and then you roll, and it's possible that that scene will be changed. In this case, because it is the first scene of a story, they advise that you actually have something called the PC character list, but since we actually only have one main character, I didn't see a reason to tack on the extra lists. If you ever read the book, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But the basic format, and this is how we'll structure our scenes every time, is the character list. And these are basically all of the characters who could and maybe would or should show up in a Marrow-centric story. And I went by memory and just kind of rattled these off: X-Men, Spider-Man, Dark Beast, Morlocks, Callisto, and Cannonball Sam Guthrie, right? Those were the characters that stuck out in my mind. They could be groups, they can be organizations, they can be, it doesn't matter. It's essentially who are some NPCs. Whether the NPC is S.H.I.E.L.D. or whether it's Nick Fury, it doesn't matter on the level. It's just saying that those people have, or organizations have, a prominent spot, can have a prominent spot in your main character's stories, or they're the ones that you'd like to have. And those are the ones, and I I forgot that in setting up the scene, I was like, oh, right, Kitty Pryde, who is a huge piece of the Days of Future Past, I didn't even put in the list, but Kitty and Marrow also have like a cool relationship. So anyway, the chaos factor, which is basically like a doom pool for the mythic process, is 5. That's kind of the default starting point. And essentially what happens is once you have your list, your character list, and then also a thread list, which are just like story threads that you maybe want to follow. I have 2: learning about the past, meaning what has happened since Marrow hasn't been on Earth, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then also avenge friends, like in a general sense. When you set up the scene, you basically have a scene proposal. And so mine was, after a fitting introduction, I think the scene should pick up with Marrow fighting Sentinels. That's what you do in Days of Future Past, right? Rescuing, and I put Kate and Kate, and that's a typo. I meant Kate and Rachel Summers, who the Days of Future Past original story, it's the final panel of the future is sort of the 2 of them cowering, and Kate is unconscious. So I wanted to pick up from that moment that is presented to us in that original Days of Future Past. And for what it's worth, I'm mostly focusing on that as a source material. I know that that setting has been visited multiple times since, and new characters have come about and stuff. I'm basically ignoring all of that. I'm going with X-Men 141 and 142. That's the original Days of Future Past comic story arc. So, and the future for that, where it flashes back between the present and the future, but the present at the time was 1980 and the future was 2013. So we're in the future of Days of Future Past, right? Okay, so and the Marrow that I'm using, and again I'll explain in a moment, but the Marrow that we're using is the nasty one, the rough one, the one who is like my favorite version, even though her skin isn't exactly as bright pink as maybe it ought to be. We're not using the modern one. We're not using the one that gets like the elven one, the one that gets healed or transformed or changed on the Skrull homeworld. I don't know. Well, if you watch the Marrow videos, excuse me, if you watch the Marrow videos, you'll know my feelings about Marrow as a character, and the parts that I like and the parts that I'm not as crazy about. So this is the Marrow I think that has the most story potential, and this is Marrow I think in her truest, in her Marrowest Marrow, if you will. So I did jot down, don't think, just play, right? And I don't want to get too bogged down in the mechanics, but that's the proposal. I rolled against the chaos factor. I rolled over here a d10. I got a 3. So when you get less than a chaos factor, your scene proposal gets changed. And so the more chaotic things get, the less likely it is your proposals will come true. Either the scene's going to get altered, or there's just going to be sort of an interrupt of a random scene, which is last time, if you've watched that series, it's what happened with Cold Heart and Speed Freak, right? It was a scene, it was a random scene, it was an interrupt of something that was almost entirely unrelated, those strings together in some fashion, but almost entirely unrelated to what we were doing. So here, that was my proposal, but then it got altered, and kind of when it's altered, the scene still happens, but it's in the next most logical way. Like, what is the next most logical thing to happen? So my thought was, well, and again, first impulse, like, this is not something that you spend, or it's not something that I spend days and days mulling over. The days and days mulling over is trying to come up with any idea, and then finally at the end admitting what I really want to do is tell a Days of Future Past story featuring Marrow, right? But so I decided that maybe Marrow doesn't actually rescue Kate and Rachel, but somehow sees them being captured, and that's how she has to fight the Sentinels sort of in the interim. So my original proposal was essentially her rescuing them, and the alteration is that she's not going to in fact rescue them, but does somehow see them or is made aware of them. And so that the green is kind of like my first run at the mechanic stuff, and then the blue are the comments. This works well. This works and will be lovely action. No Oracle questions. So Oracle is like, you can ask Mythic different questions. Are the Sentinels 10 feet tall? Yes or no? And so on and so forth. I don't get bogged down in the Oracle questions most of the time because I already get the meat of what I want here. As we move forward and things will need clarification, or if it's really unclear, if I don't have a good vision for a start, then we'll use Oracle questions. But I didn't have any. I was like, okay, great. We're going to throw Marrow into some Sentinels and we're going to beat them up. But it was at that point that I realized I didn't have a data file for Marrow, which I rectified. I threw some artwork in here, and it's just, this is a frame. These are both from Little Morlock Lost, which is one of my favorite stories. It's the one where Marrow is basically running through the city, and Storm and Callisto are like tracking her down. And at the end, Sam finds her, and there's 2 police officers, and Sam like prevents her from beating them up and stuff. And he says to Marrow that she needs to apologize, and she says, "I'm sorry." And he says, "I'm proud of you." And then this panel is why. It's just because I said a few words. And he's like, "No, it's because you meant it." And I liked that frame of Marrow because it's one of the few times you see her as vulnerable. And it's a nice window into the fact that she is, at the end of the day, even though she is in age closer to 30, she's in her late 20s. And again, we talked about in the Marrow sort of deep dive that I did, but she's emotionally stunted. And so working through things like apologies and mercy and compassion, that's difficult for her because she has so much rage and so much anger inside. But then I made this mock-up of the top of the opening page for Days of Future Past, which says, "Once upon a time, it was a nice place to live. It is no longer." And then put that over the title page for the Little Morlock Lost story, where she's confronting a blonde who has insulted her. She says, "Come again, not so pretty princess. I couldn't hear over your shrill. Exactly what sort of freak am I?" And that's the angsty Marrow, right? But then this orange here are thoughts that I had. In fact, they're thoughts that I had last night, and I made a note on my phone that I wanted to put these down somewhere. So that I could come back to them. So I have this line of, "We're the freaking X-Men, bub," of being like the closer, right? If you remember, there was an issue where they were fighting the Ngari, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but there's like an apostrophe there, but it's the Ngari. They're like demons or demon-esque. And at the very end of it, the X-Men are sort of deposited back into our dimension, and Marrow, somebody says like, "Who are you?" or something like that, and Marrow says, "We're the X-Men." And one of the really important or significant or crucial pieces of Marrow's character, in my opinion, is that she's one of the few people who fights with the X-Men that is an X-Men. She doesn't have an X on her uniform, but she is absolutely included in the rank of X-Men when she's being written by somebody who acknowledges her presence, not just being like crammed into the edge of a couple panels. So I wanted to include that line because of where we're going, and I thought she needs to reform her team, right? That's what she does. She forms cells. Her first appearance as an adult is she's got Gene Nation, and she's good at that, and they revisited that a number of times. And so she even leads in the Cat and Mouse story with where she's teamed up with Kitty and they're going to find Flag Smasher, right? She's leading the team, and she's allowed, like, encouraged to lead the team, like. So she has this potential in her to reform the X-Men. So I just love the idea of the final panel of this act being, the spread with mutants that she's freed or discovered or whatever. And I can just see someone saying, well, who do you think you are? And I just have her saying, we're the freaking X-Men, bub. I just love it. It's so Marrow. But also a note about having a collector with a family. In my mind, it's like a sort of an upper class family who are collecting relics, mutant relics, or at least initially here in this first act, X-Men related relics, like, belts, maybe Wolverine's mask, Cyclops' visor, things like that. And so we are going to very loosely, again, I don't plan too much ahead, but very loosely structure things around the idea that Marrow is going to find these things and recollect them, right? Recollections, remember? So she's going to get them back and then use them to form her own team. And then Cosmic Chrome bones fade. So let's talk about where Marrow comes from, and I'll move over to the next page here and we'll walk through what I've got set up here. So I'm just going to read what I wrote, and then we'll talk about the data files. So thunderclouds roil and churn in the night sky as lightning flashes, illuminating what remains of New York City after decades of war between extraordinary superhumans and mechanical titans called Sentinels. The Sentinels won. Sentinels won that war, right? Like, you got to hit the bleak dystopia right out the bat. A trio of the metal monstrosities marches through the rubble-strewn streets with two shackled prisoners in tow. Their advanced sensors, second to none when it comes to detecting mutated individuals in the vicinity, nevertheless fail to notice a small man-sized object plummeting from the atmosphere, heading straight for them. It smashes through one sentinel and craters into the broken asphalt. The captives are momentarily freed as the remaining pair of gigantic robots assess the moment. The object is some kind of organic cocoon, roughly egg-shaped and with a slight chrome appearance. A figure emerges, covered in scales of similar material. She appears angry. And I wrote Logan and Weapon X vibes, like when there's like the smoke and he's like in the tundra or I guess it would be the forest, but like all the snow and there's like cool lighting and shadow going on and he's just feral, and it's this dark night and it's a stormy night and it's raining and there's thunder and lightning and this is just like very dark, and then all of a sudden you have this sort of meteorite smash through the chest of a sentinel. I imagine, so you've got the three sentinels and the sentinel sort of in the rear is has Kate and Rachel kind of in tow, and they're collared and shackled and everything, and then the meteorite smashes through that sentinel, which then breaks the bonds for Rachel and Kate, who are tired and not able to access their powers and such. So they're not necessarily going to have the energy to run away, but they are able to at least get some distance away as the other two sentinels turn around and look at this egg-shaped thing which has hatched. So the chrome piece, where is this coming from? So we'll probably explore it more, maybe do some flashback scenes in the future, but this is picking up where Gambit healed Marrow on the Skrull homeworld before Galactus ate the planet. I'm saying that this is Marrow from that. So I think that whether it turns out that this is the original Marrow and there was a clone that was sent to Earth, or like that returned with them, or if this is the only Marrow and it turns out that in this timeline Marrow never actually was healed in time, and Gambit had to leave without her. We'll explore that in the future. I don't want to think too much about that. We'll see whatever fits as we're telling the story. But the chrome piece is she was exposed to Galactus's cosmic energy, right? And so what I want to do is imagine that she still has some of that, not to any like great degree, or at least not that she's able to control in any way. But I think it's going to give us two outs, so to speak. One, I think it's going to make her more difficult to detect. And so that's kind of like a plot armor in a sense, but I think we'll explore it. And then two, I think when her bones come out of her body, I think they'll be silver chrome for a little while, the way like Silver Surfer looks. And over time they'll fade and back into their original appearance. But I think that will be sort of the first indication, or one of the indications, that this is something has changed about her in some way. Her mutation has changed, or her exposure to that cosmic energy, which I'm realizing now that we had a whole lot of exposing to energies in the Mythicals. Maybe I just like it's very classic cosmic, like X-Men writing, like, oh, there was some mysterious energy, ta-da, it made the Hulk, ta-da, it made the Fantastic Four. Of course, as we know in real life, most of these energies, it would be like, ta-da, you're now a skeleton. But regardless, that's in my mind as when she pulls these out. Plus, it makes for some really cool visuals if she pops claws, because they're going to be silver for a minute, and it's going to just harken back more to that Wolverine. So whereas before I described her as Wolverine Light, in the Days of Future Past story, Wolverine has been obliterated, and so I just like the idea that she's really going to pick up that man. Okay, her data file, I did it all in Mythic, not Mythic, but Roll20, so that we can change things around if we don't like it. This was sort of a first pass, so I didn't actually make up a full data file. Maybe we'll do that at the end of the act once we're sure that these distinctions are good, and so on. But her solo, in order, solo is best, then buddy, then team. I figure that probably makes the most sense. She's kind of a pain when she's part of a team, but though she can lead. Buddy, she has some cool times with Kitty. She has some cool times with Angel. She has some cool times with Spider-Man. So I figure she's okay at that. But of course, solo is where it's at. Her three distinctions. One of them is a word she said. Again, I've talked about it before, but when she's fighting Wolverine in the Danger Room and she's being all, near berserk mode, she says, "Hate is the engine. I am the machine." And I love that as a distinction for a setting which has Sentinels so prominently. Ex-Morlock, X-Man. You're never an Ex-Morlock, and neither are you ever an X-Man, but I like the idea of using it as a distinction, because we can use it as a D8 or a D4. Is she really an Ex-Morlock, etc.? And then emotionally immature, again, I didn't think too hard about this stuff. I just went with what my muse said, and I feel like emotionally immature and that sort of stunted piece, when she's doing more like social interactions and stuff, that may come into handy. It might become in handy, and one way or the other, it may help her. So we'll see how that plays out. She's got a plot point there. Gave her one power set, bad to the bone, enhanced agility, enhanced senses, enhanced strength, but then superhuman stamina for that healing factor. The senses are, she's got the vision, the near darkness vision. I don't know there's much light in the sewers, so it's essentially dark vision. A bit of enhanced strength, because I think that fits with the character and what we saw in the comics, at least this, up until this point. And then enhanced agility, because it feels like that she was pretty acrobatic. Though I didn't give her acrobatic expert. I didn't want to have bloat. I didn't want to have data card bloat. I did give her, straight out of the book, Berserk, Dangerous, and Second Wind as SFX, and with the mutant limit. I think those will be very helpful. And then Combat, Covert, and Tech Expert, Menace Master. So the Tech Expert is bombs, but also she spent that time in the Hill Dimension and made those suits of armor that kept them sort of stealthy when they came back over, and she obviously figured out a way to get here from there, though I guess maybe Mikhail Center, I don't know, but it feels like Tech Expert works, and it is a less punchy option for her. Our bad guys are taken straight out of the book too, two of them Expert Sentinels. So when they have these are the, what do they call them, minor characters? I was just looking at it yesterday, but at any rate, so when an Expert Sentinel rolls, so we'll grab a distinction from up here, and then we'll roll the D8 for the Expert Sentinel, and then they get an affiliation, and then they get a trait from their, it's not officially a power set, but it's a trait, right? Power trait. And they do have SFX, and they do have limits. So there's two of them, and I wanted to highlight this adaptive learning SFX, which says you add a D6 to the dice pool for each failed action against a superhuman opponent, which is kind of nice. That's going to beef up our Doom pool. Her SFXs also beef up the Doom pool. So we were doing the mythicals, and it was just like loads of stress was getting thrown back and forth, and the doom pool was really getting built into this machine of like, well, it was a very formidable doom pool, and so I think that that's going to make things really nice this time. But okay, so that was, gosh dang, that was 20 minutes of me talking. I'm so sorry for all the rambling, but I feel like it's all relevant background, and it'll be much quicker in the future because I won't have to explain so much. So we're going to get right into the scene now. We've got the two sentinels. They're facing Marrow. She's kind of emerging from this bone cocoon, and that's what it is, right? It's her mutant power effectively sort of surrounded her in this organic cocoon, this bone cocoon, and her bones are like more dense than just ordinary human bones anyway. So, and of course with the cosmic energy. So she kind of like, it, as it hits the asphalt, there's this big what do they call it? It's not a crater, but like the line where it digs, like a big furrow, a big ditch, where it's just kind of like until it comes to a stop, and it's kind of cracked. And of course there's pieces of that first sentinel everywhere. The rain is pouring down, so there's like little fires and little arcs from the first sentinel, and maybe the legs are still standing where it was when she smashed through it, but the whole torso has been obliterated. One thing I like about Sentinels is they always talk about things. They always talk what they're thinking. So probably the first panel after these initial panels, I think they would say something, it'd be like the two Sentinel heads together. They'd be looking, and they'd say something like analyzing anomaly. Yeah, that's probably what they'd say. Analyzing anomaly, detecting or threat detection or whatever. And then we see Marrow kind of emerging in the sort of shadow and smoky whatever. And she's got this bone scale armor, which is silver and chrome. And I think for the purposes of the shot, we're just going to go ahead and say she's got Wolverine claws, three out of each hand, right? And she's like stepping out. She does not have her original costume, at least not that we can see. It's just that bone scale armor covering up most of her body. And then switching back to the Sentinels and being like, threat level low. And and then I think we'll have Marrow go first. This is going to be tricky. The tricky part is with only 2 tokens, I'm going to get confused acting and reacting. But so for Marrow, we're going to have Marrow act first, and she's just going to launch into the nearest Sentinel, which I think will just be this top Sentinel. And for that, we roll hate is the engine, I'm the machine. Well, solo, right? 1d10 solo. And then hate is the engine, I'm the machine, 1d8. Probably going with enhanced strength here because she's not necessarily being subtle, but she's just leaping, very Wolverine-esque, leaping with the claws. Berserk, add a die from the Doom Pool to one or more attack options. Step up the Doom Pool. Oh, the Doom Pool die. See, the Marvel Horror reading sometimes is janky. Basically, you borrow it. Every time you use it, you step it up, and then you put it back when you're done. So we will go ahead and do that. So we'll borrow a d6. But now it's going to become a d8. And I don't mind just putting it back in the pool, because I'm not going to use it more than once. Also, she has add a d6 to your dice pool for an attack action and step back the highest die, which means the largest die. And then you step up physical stress, which is definitely what she's doing. So the largest die is going to be a d8, the d10 solo die. So we're going to make it a d8, but we'll step up the effect die that comes out. And then we don't need to worry about second wind, but combat expert 1d10. 1d8. And that's that. So this is to deal physical stress on a Sentinel. All right. Mouse is double clicking a lot. So we will buy that opportunity. She gets another plot point. And then the best she can do is the 7 and the 6. Let's spend the plot point right away so that we can add. Why is it not? I can't see the I can't see the dice sizes. Oh, is it the advanced dice? Oh, that's a pain. All right, let's fix that. I think that one. Yeah, okay. So we're going to add the 7, the 6, and this 3 to go with the D8 effect. So 7 and 6 is 13. So Marrow's total is going to be 16 with D10 because the D8 gets stepped up because of the dangerous SFX. So if it works, for the first Sentinel. So the first Sentinel's reaction, it gets, we'll go Dark and Stormy Night as a D4. Maybe when they get injured, the rain will be pouring in, and we'll go ahead and step up this. Now we've got 3d8 in the pool. So 1d4 and stepping up a Doom die, and then Expert Sentinel's d8. And then there's 2 of them, so we'll go with d8. I think that fits the spirit of they would be networked together. Superhuman Strength, I think it's durability. That's going to help them most. Adaptive Learning doesn't matter, and that's the dice that we have. So this is their reaction. Oof. Very, very react. Okay, well. S1's total is 18 with D4 effect. Marrow fails. And I wonder if no, maybe they just like swat her out of the way as she leaps. They just and she just smashes into like a building and falls to the street. But they did roll an opportunity. She's got 1 plot point left, and I think we have to do it because we have to get a stunt die in here. I don't know why that's happening, but it is. But that was Marrow's action, and she failed. So the physical stress didn't matter. That didn't matter. But they're the ones that we have to pay attention to if they fail. So she leaps, and the Sentinel just boom, swats her into a building. But now it's their turn, and I think that they are going to just raise their palms and start to fire with their energy beam projectors. Just pew, 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 pew. This is obviously a threat, and I think maybe now we have a panel of them saying threat level minimal, like even lower. Like maybe the first time it was low, and now it's like minimal. Like they're not even gonna bother. So the Sentinels action. So I'm gonna have them work together. So I'm just gonna add the beam projector twice. Like this Sentinel is gonna help this Sentinel. Well, I guess I don't need to write any. So it's gonna be 1d4 for the Stormy Night, and we'll step up an 8 to a 10. Whoa. And Expert Sentinel 1d8. And Buddy 1d8. And then Energy Beam Projector will be 2d10s. And Adaptive Learning only takes place if they fail. So then that is their pool. And this, of course, will be to do physical stress on Marrow. That is pretty decent. So they can easily do 16. With a D10. So I can use that 4 as a D10 right there. And then Marrow's reaction. She's alone. I think maybe we use Hate is the Engine, I am the Machine as a D4. Maybe she's not the machine. Maybe they are better machines. And agility, senses, strength, superhuman stamina. She's not really dodging. I don't see her as dodging. I think it's strength that she's just going to have to take the blunt of these energy projectors, energy beam projectors. None of the SFX matter. Combat master or combat expert, excuse me. Yeah, this is going to be tight. Oh, if she can do it. She's got a plot point if she needs it. Oof. All right, I think she's taking some stress. So the reason I put it at the top of her thing is hopefully I'll remember to add it into their pool. having it at the top and in big red letters. So Marrow's total, let's get in the habit. We'll do reaction total. Does it bother you when I have typos? It bothers me so much when I have typos. I need to get over it. I spend so much time backspacing. Marrow's reaction total is, I mean, gosh dang, if we do an 8, it's a heroic success, which steps right up to a D12. But we can do second wind and throw the D12 into the doom pool. So I think that's what we got to do. 8 with D10 effect. Marrow takes D12 stress, right? Because theirs is 16, so that's a heroic success for them. So their D10 steps up to a D12. This, and we'll put it into physical. She's just got hurt very badly. And I think that's what it is. It's kind of like if you've watched the Star Wars movie where Kylo Ren is like, don't stop firing, or fire everything, or whatever it is, and keep firing, is that what he says? And all the walkers are just shooting at Luke on that one planet with the cool sand and the foxes, and it's just like, you know, just massive amounts of beam projectors, just pew, 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 pew. And rubble is flying and splintering, and there's dust, and of course, again, with all the rain, it's splashing and it's flashing. You've got the lightning going, but now you've got these beam projectors that are just lighting up the whole street. Yeah, I like that a lot. So Marrow takes stress. So let's move everybody back. See, my mouse like doubles and triples clicks sometimes, and it's frustrating. But I think we have to have Marrow go again. So what I'll do is I'll use the second wind before you make an action, including one of these powers. You can move your physical stress die to the doom pool and then step up one of these powers. So what I'm going to do is move this to the doom pool, and then I will step up enhanced. I think enhanced strength makes the most sense. And we'll have her roar and leap out of the cloud of beams and smoke and rain, just leap out at the nearest sentinel and try maybe instead of 3 claws now, she's got like the scales on her have become a little bit more spiked, and it's like a little bit more maybe even her head, like the scales have turned into like, not horns, but you know how Wolverine has those like flares of hair. Maybe like she's resembling more in that berserk state, kind of. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. So she just leaps out and tries to take out the nearest one. So 1d10 solo. Hate is the engine, I'm the machine. This time we'll use it as a d8. And I'm going to actually throw the stunt die in there as well as a d10. And what do we want to name this? I think we name the stunt Hate is the engine, I'm the machine. I think the distinction is the stunt. I think she's just like leaping out. And we're going to do strength, but it's a d10 because we're stepping it up because of that SFX for this action, the second wind. Add a die from the doom pool to one or more attack options. Step up the doom pool die by 1 for each action. So I will grab a d8 from the doom pool and turn it into a d10. I'm doing it kind of out of order. Like if you were at the table, you would borrow the die and put it back, but I'm only going to use it for one action anyway. And then dangerous, add a d6 to your dice pool for an attack action and step back the biggest. So 1d6, but then we'll step down this d10 to a d8. I wonder if you could do that. I wonder if you could use that to undo the berserk. Interesting. I never thought about it. But we'll step up her attack action. So we used all of her SFX this time, and then combat expert. And this is to inflict stress. Hey, that's a better roll. So we're going to give her a plot point. We're going to step up this 8 to a 10. Look at that doom pool. We've got broken sentinels, rubble, everything is going wonderful. Love it. Love it. Okay, but her total. So we've got 3 7s. So we gotta spend a plot point here. And we're going to keep all 3 sevens. So Marrow's action total is 21 with, I guess, D10. Oh, we can use a D10. That first die is a D10. So with D12, because it's getting stepped up from the dangerous SFX, with D12 effect to do physical stress on S1. And their reaction is I don't know, dark and stormy. And stormy night. D4. Oh, that's my phone. D4. Step up a D10 to a D12. And then Expert Sentinel 1D8. I think you only get your solo die when you're being attacked directly like that. And then durability. That's that. So this is to defend against a 21. Fantastic. So we can do a 13. We can also do an 11. So let's do S1 reaction total is a, what did I say? We can do an 11 with D6 effect. And I'm doing that because if it's a double heroic, I mean, even if it's a single heroic, I guess it steps the D12 up anyway. If we did the 8 and the 5 for 13, because she's inflicting D12. So S1 is eviscerated. So I think what happens here, and that was her action. Let's be consistent. Let's move that over. So I think what happens here is she leaps out of the rubble and the beams and everything, and she just claws into the hands. So when the Sentinels are doing this, they have their hands out, right? And I think she sticks her claws into like the wrist and then into the elbow and then into the bicep. Like she just claws her way, joom, 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 and then swoosh, there goes the head, and it just goes flying and falls onto the ground. And she's like got this chrome bone scale armor and tapping into her inner Wolverine, but being her own person. Oh yeah, I like that a lot. And so there's one Sentinel left who just looks and says, no, maybe it's the head that just fell off is like crackling, reassessing the threat level, like it's like stuttering and then sort of sparks and is done now. Yeah, I like that a lot. And so there's one Sentinel left. This first Sentinel is done for, and it is their turn. So I think that the body of that second Sentinel just kind of like as it's crumpling, Marrow rides it down, and she's breathing heavy, and she's in that berserker state, which I don't think that I think Marrow is capable of a berserker state, though like in so many things not as intense as Wolverine, but this is like the intro and we want to really get into the character and do something cool and attention grabbing. So we're fully tapping into that. But the Expert Sentinel is going to, I think, the energy beam projector, maybe it's not going to use the energy beam projector right away. It's just going to reach out and try to like smash it, or smash her. No, step on her. It's going to try and step on her. Yeah, or like kick her. Yeah, step on her. I like the idea that it's going to like try and step on her. It's just like she's a bug. Yeah, that feels like a Sentinel behavior. That feels like dumb Sentinel behavior, which is what we're going for with the series here. So we're going to have him or it roll ruined urban landscape, dark and stormy night. I'll have to get better with my scene distinctions and make it a little bit more appropriate if I'm going to be using characters that don't have their own distinctions. But maybe the fact that it's that dark and stormy night is really hindering things. But this, of course, now we have just this insanely intense doom pool. 3d12s and a d10. And then the d8 for the Expert Sentinel. Solo, you're all alone now, buddy. And then strength, superhuman strength. Yeah, that's to do physical stress. Oof, not going to work so well for you, man. Do I want to buy that? Buy it for stunt. It'd be neat to like have an SFX about getting to step up stunt dice or something. S1 action total is 7, or I guess we could do 8 with D8 effect, do E-stress on Marrow. So that with this doom pool being like this, the street, which is already rubble, is even more rubble, right? We've got sentinel parts laying around. Maybe the head, when it fell onto a car. It feels odd to increase the doom pool by wrecking ruins, but I think it's the idea that this is making even more of a mess. And now, the way sentinels work, now that she's been seen, maybe there's been some reports or something like that. So Marrow's reaction, she's solo. I think we gotta use I'm the machine. It is the engine, I'm the machine. And he's trying to step on her. I think let's use enhanced strength. But let's use this. No, we can't use stunt eye in reaction. That's for attack options. That's an attack action. Okay, so she's actually not so great at defense. I guess that tracks. 1d8 for combat expert. Is that right? A d10, a d8, a d8, and a d8. Okay, so she doesn't have a gigantic pool. But that's okay. So this is her reaction roll. Oh, yes. Very yes. She doesn't, unfortunately, have plot point to counterattack. That would have been nice. I almost gave her that SFX, but so Marrow's reaction total is very successful. We can do 15 with the effect. She is unharmed. So we used strength. So I like to think that this sentinel tried to stomp on her, and at first it looked like it worked, but then whoosh, spikes stick out like she becomes a like an urchin, like a sea urchin or a porcupine, just shoom, all throughout his foot, and it just splinters and peels open the foot, and she's standing there and is still very much okay. And now the sentinel is like wobbling off kilter, and now I think she's gonna go ahead, take her action, and hopefully finish him off. And let's see, so that will be d10. So let's see, she busted up his foot, and now I think she's going to maybe go for the other leg. No, I think now she's going to start pulling bones out of her back and of her shoulders and her forearms, and just start flinging them. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Just these bone knives, these bone daggers, just all up the side of the sentinel, leading up to the head. Kind of like she clawed up with the other one. This will just be like boom, 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 all up its chest, and then up to its neck, and then up to its head. Yeah. It's the engine, baby. No, I want her to have a plot point, though. So maybe it's not the hate is the engine part. Maybe it's ruined urban landscape, stormy night. Gotta go with it. I gotta go with it. I suppose she could earn a plot point when affected by mutants' specific sources. Sentinels are pretty much that, but it feels a bit reachy. That's okay. She's got a stunt die. It's all right. Who needs plot points? So a d10 plus a d8 from the distinction. We're going to throw the stunt die in there because this is like cosmic bone daggers that are going to flash out. Of course, they're all like chrome and stuff now too, right? And strength d8, 8. She's flinging these out. And then berserk, dangerous. So add a die from the doom pool, step up the doom by 1 each. I'm going to borrow a doom die. I'm going to borrow a d12. And usually what happens when you go over d12 is you start a new die. I'm going to borrow a d12, and then I'm going to put it back with a d6. And then dangerous, add a d6 to your dice pool for an action, and then step down the biggest one, which means that d12 gets put back into d10. And then combat expert. Almost feels like it wants to be menace master. All right. Well, no plot points, but we can do the 7 and the 6. 7 and 6 is 13 with D12 effect, because that first die is a D10, but if we're dealing physical stress, and because of the SFX, it's going to get stepped up. P stress to the second Sentinel, who then gets to roll for them. Dark and Stormy Night. Step the 6 up. This is Days of Future Past, folks. Look at that Doom pool. Have you ever? Oh my goodness. And then D8 Expert Sentinel. It is all alone, but it has superhuman durability. All right, they cannot do that. They rolled an opportunity, but she doesn't have any plot points. So S2's total reaction total is 9, which is not going to be enough. Which is going to be enough. Now let's have them blow up. Let's do 7. Let's do the 5 and the 2 for 7. D4 effect. S2 gets daggered. And I think as the daggers are tracing up its torso, maybe it starts to broadcast and it says something like calling for backup, or Sentinel, like X245 calling for backup, and that's when the dagger just goes straight through the head of the Sentinel. And so now there's it blows up and falls over. And so now, or no, maybe it doesn't fall over. Oh no, it does have a busted foot. So yeah, so it staggers and then falls over into the other building. So now you've got 3 very broken Sentinels and Marrow sort of in the rubble. And off to the side, you've got Kate and Rachel, Kate Pride and Rachel, who are watching this scene unfold. And it's kind of like, wow, like what has just happened? But I think now that the intensity has gone down in terms of the Sentinel threat, the bone scales start to retract. Do we want them to retract a little bit? Sort of like melt back into Marrow. This is sort of a one-shotty kind of thing. I don't know that they're always going to retract, but they sort of retract and melt back into her form. And that's when we see, as the audience, we see that it's Marrow, and we see that she's got her very torn up and ragged green costume, sort of iconic costume. And Kate, who was Kitty, says like dot 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 Marrow, and it's huge capitals with the exclamation and the question mark, and then Marrow sort of slumps over at their feet. And I think that's the scene. I think we stop there. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's good. Well, shortest scene to date. I guess that's the secret, is just have one main character. We will pick up right after this in the next scene next time. I'm really liking this. I didn't know, again, how it was going to go, but yeah, this is Marrow tapping into that Marrow. And look at that Doom pool. I mean, come on. 3D12s, a D10 and D8. Gotta love it. All right, we're going to leave it there. If you have any questions, comments, if you noticed something I missed or messed up, or if you have a question about something I did, throw it in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Excelsior.